All right, so good morning, everyone. My name is Ridwana. Welcome to the webinar series from Ray of Green Sustainability called In Conversation With, where in every session I deep dive into a variety of topics relating to the creative economy and its relationship to sustainability. I am the sustainability-led designer and concept creator working with a consulting agency that I co-founded called Creatively Connected, which takes brands on a journey from idea to creation and production in an environmentally sound manner. So today brings us to the close of the first season of these webinars. It's been incredibly exciting. It's been amazing. And if there are any of the webinars that you have missed out on, I will pop the link into the chat so that you can catch up on that. And yeah, today we're discussing social entrepreneurship. As Richard Branson says, doing good is good for business. And today, my two guests seem to think so too. Joining me is Christi Jackson from the Peyobe Project. Christi has been involved in social upliftment and enterprise for a good few years now and was instrumental in developing the skills of indigent women at the Diepsloot Foundation. We're also accompanied by Karishma Kelsey from Karishma Design. And Karishma started out as a fashion designer moons ago in SA and evolved her business into a thriving social endeavor that not only makes people look good, but also helps them to feel good. So Christi, let's start with you. How about you let us into your business journey, and I'll give you a few minutes to get into that.
So, like you mentioned, I've been consulting with the Diepsloot Foundation. I started there about 4 years ago. Took a little bit of a break and now I'm back there. What the Diepsloot Foundation does is they focus on adult education. So they have classes in English, maths, and computers, but they also do skills development like sewing and carpentry. So I've been running a small business development program with them with about 24 students there. And I've been focusing mainly on the sewing learners and the carpentry learners. So what we're doing is we're creating products with recycled materials. The idea is create something you can sell back into the community, so within Diepsloot, or to sell it into the private sector. And this gave birth to my other idea, the Peyobe Project. So this is a project where we create teddy bears. We make and sell teddy bears. For every one that we sell, one goes back into the community to an early childhood development center. So it's a full circle project. It starts in Diepsloot with the seamstresses, and then it goes back into the Diepsloot to an early childhood development center.
Amazing, very cool. Karishma, would you like to let us into your business journey a bit?
Yeah, sure. So my journey started in the early 2000s. So I've been a proponent of the ethical circular economic systems for the last 20 years. And the whole primary focus of the journey of Karishma Design has been twofold. And one, the first idea was this initiative to democratize fashion and to create equal opportunity and plurality in the fashion scene. We know that the fashion scene has been sort of embedded in privilege and separation, and fashion, especially in the South African environment, has been one that was exclusive and classist. So our aim as Karishma Design, having seen all of this firsthand from in Asia, you know, and seeing the class divides of the makers to the actual people who are wearing it, to the environmental demise with people having stained hands, just working in denim factories, to silted rivers in India and at that time in China. Having come from that and having seen that, we were just completely taken aback, and having been part of that and experiencing that kind of separation and awful treatment, I was determined that whenever I stepped back into the fashion industry, it would be as a force of good. So that was the first push, was really to democratize fashion through creating economic empowerment opportunities. And then that led very quickly into our response to excessive waste in the industry. So our journey took us from Europe all the way to Southeast Asia, where we worked with artisans from different communities. The first being communities in rural Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And all the production houses and all the people that worked with us were considered to be part of our social restoration economic model. And the business model at the time was called Thrive. And it was aimed based social economic restoration, where everyone from the maker to the wearer was able to thrive within the parameters of the earth thriving. And so that's our journey, taken us to 7 countries. And now back in South Africa, and we're now back in New Zealand. And the countries where we built these workshops for women under fair trade conditions were Vietnam, Taiwan, Thailand, Sri Lanka, South Africa, being our close to my heart, and now we in India working with artisans. We'll be growing our own textiles and then going to produce it. So that's a journey, alongside a very strong research and education focus as well.
Interesting. Really, really cool. So Christi, back to you now. I'd like to find out from you, like, how many women thus far have you trained at the Deep Sloyd Foundation? You work primarily with women,
about
right?
15 women. Yes, it's women, and then there's 2 carpenters as well, but mostly women who are the seamstresses, and it's been about 15 of them this year.
And in terms of measuring the impact that you've made, what would you say that metric kind of looks like? What sort of impact have you been making in these women's lives?
It's great to hear that they're actually making products and selling them back into the community. So for me, that's a big success factor, knowing that they've taken something that I've taught them and they're selling it back into the community. It's a little bit slow sometimes. It doesn't always happen to be making things and then selling them back, but it's a process. So doing the business development program, I'm taking them through a few modules and showing them how to grow a business and not just make a product. I think that's where a big problem is. They just make something and they think, okay, cool, I'm going to sell it, but they don't know where to start.
That's very, very cool. So within the model that you're using, there's kind of these little micro economies that you're creating, right? So there's the township economy that you're kind of tapping into and allowing these women to understand how township economies work.
Yes.
That's really, really cool. Karishma, what about you? How do you measure your social impact?
Well, because the actual structure of the businesses that we run in each of the different countries vary based on the needs of the workers, the impacts will be slightly different. So, example, in Thailand, for instance, where we had 8 women in the workshop. So the first thing is that we empower the women to own that workshop. So Karishma Design doesn't actually own the workshop, we just help set it up. So the first bit of impact that is quite easy to measure is the sense of confidence and the sense of pride that comes with, I own this business. So, these women, that's the first thing. And then dependent on what they needed. So in Thailand, the women had asked me very specifically to pay them, whilst we paid them a very, very fair, lucrative salary, they had said to me, please, can you document the salary into 2 parts? So they asked me to set up a private bank account for them, where I just put money in, and I called it, their children's fund, and it was each of their children. Was their education fund. So whilst it was theirs and it was set up in Thailand, it was a bank account, but the money didn't go into the home because, the cultural structure is that the women may be working, but they are not the heads of the family. So to separate the kind of control that the patriarch would have in the family, the women kind of had this structure that we saved. So our impact was very easy to measure from, just that one, because this was a school fund for the kids. And so the 8 women, we had each of them with 2 to 3 children. And in 2016, we several of the children graduating from university, and our, one being a doctor, one being a nurse, and 3 others being teachers. So this is just one of the structures of how we can, document the impact from a human perspective. From a mental perspective, we weigh the cloth. We actually, we've bought 500 meters, and it's not really meterage. It's usually, scraps of fabric or then meters. We have saved much of fabric from actually being disposed of through landfill or through incineration. So that's the quantifiable metric in terms of that. And then the carbon metric, it's not been as sort of mathematically structured, but we know that we produce right at the hub of the waste. So part of the reason these community developments has been that that's also where we in the world produce our clothes that we wear, So we buy as close as possible from those textile factories, and then we produce them. And so when we sell them overseas to the overseas markets or to our local market in New Zealand or in South Africa or Canada, then we ship it directly to that market. We're not, bringing it into New Zealand or bringing it to South Africa. It's actually part of it was to decentralize where we produce in order to reduce the footprint. So if Ridwana did a garment, it's going to have to be made in South Africa for Ridwana to have that.
Yeah,
so that was the and up until now, we, because we have been old and we are still small and we're very community driven, we didn't actually have the tools in place to say we've saved X amount of carbon. But this is something that we are looking at right now on when we go, how would we actually, measure it to the, to a quantifiable amount. So yeah, two forms of impacts on a very, sort of macro level that we've. And then the third form would be our education and skills development workshops. That's when you have, somebody who's started just sewing flat, and then now they're doing beautiful silk garments. And the cool thing is we don't, because part of the business model is to encapsulate the wisdom of that culture. Kind of, I listen to those girls and go, well, we think this is a better way of doing something, or we think we would like to sew and cut and recreate in a certain way. So it's that, so impact is measured by that transformational journey of that young artisan to a more, sort of blossoming artisan that we get at the end.
Amazing.
And we have those globally.
Yeah.
So that's
No, that's incredible. That's incredible. Christi, would you like to just walk me through the actual nuts and bolts of the upskilling that you're doing with the women that you work with? Like, at what stage are they coming to you, and when they leave you, where are they?
Okay, so Dipset Foundation does offer sewing classes. So the ladies who come to me have been through a preliminary round of sewing classes. They know about garment construction and how to make clothing. What they don't know is how to use their sewing skills to make something else. So, like, for example, thanks to you, they can now make baby shoes, which is something they would never have thought that they could do unless they tried it. We've been doing upskilling by taking offcuts of material and little projects out of it, like teddy bears and door stops, anything you can do with fabric. The idea is to teach them you can do more with fabric than just sew clothes, because in a community like Dipset, they don't have money to go and buy a meter of material. I mean, it's 40 to 150 Rand for a meter of material, and you need 2 or 3 meters to make a dress. You simply don't have the money to buy that and then to sell that dress for someone who might not want to buy it. So what I do with them is I teach them how to make small projects with material that is available.
And so in terms of you guys are almost like a drop-off depot for textile waste. Where is your textile waste coming from?
So it usually comes from churches and communities that have off-cut materials, fashion designers, but mostly because it's a non-profit organization, we always have a call to action where we ask for material. So we're not really sure where it comes from, but a lot of it comes from churches and fashion designers.
And still with you, Christi, how did the idea of the Pear Bear project happen? What was the blossoming of that?
So I found when I did this development program in Diepsloot, I asked the ladies and the gentlemen, what do they want to do for their business? And the one thing that all of them said, even though they don't have much to start with, is they said, I want to give back to the community. I want to do something and give back to the community as well. So that's the Pear Bear Project was born. We make and sell teddy bears. For every teddy bear that is made in Diepsloot, another one gets sent back into Diepsloot. So it's a full circle. That's the way that the ladies can give back to the community as well.
And your teddy bears are made using the same textile waste that you guys are beneficiating from?
Yes, it's about a 20 by 30 centimeter piece of material on each side of the teddy bear. So we can do a lot with off-cut materials.
I have also seen that you have a call for getting people to actually make their own bears and donate it to your center. How's that been working out?
It's good. It's been working. I've been getting some funny looking bears, but they're great. No,
That's
really
amazing.
Cool.
That's amazing. My son wants to be a part of that, actually. He has designed his own teddy bear, and I was like, this is going to give someone nightmares, but okay.
You never know.
Exactly, right? So, this is the question. I'm going to start with Karishma and then move back to you, Christi. Karishma, do you think that it's easier or not so much to apply for funding, for at least from impact funders like VCs and angel investment, that sort of thing, as a social enterprise?
That is difficult. It's actually, it depends from my experience. So Karishma Design is largely funded by Karishma and through my other initiatives that I create so that I can actually fund it. And when we have had 2 angel investors, it's been just private philanthropists that have chosen to invest in what we were doing, who believed in what we were doing, or they were kind of events that were auction type events, so people that really kind of got on board that way. In South Africa, I found that there were more centers and more organizations, and so more organized sort of incentives for people to be able to get funding, and one of it being, the development of trade and industries. And this is back in the time when I was there. And then, of course, the fashion councils. But then there's also a lot, and this is something that I really have, struggled with internationally, but I know how well this sits in South Africa. And it's something that I'm forever proud of, and that is, in South Africa, you can go to a church organization, the temples, or the, be it, Christian or Muslim or whatever sect it is. And people, you have to be from that sect, but all you've got to do is put this call for action and get a whole bunch of people. And, my family and are very involved in these types of philanthropic activities in and around South Africa. And people just rally together, and they're not doing it for the name and the fame. Whereas it's more difficult, I'm finding, in a sort of international arena, to try in the field of fashion. And I think the problem until I think about 3 years ago was that fashion, the concept of clothes was not considered art. And so
that's true.
So under the category of creative arts, there are lots of funding. So in New Zealand, we have Creative NZ, there's the United Nations funding, and there's all sorts of little tiny funds. So that, but it's not for fashion. It's this wording, it's this gray area that clothing is considered unnecessary, that has made funding difficult. But then where I find most exciting, and this is my ray of hope in the scene of funding, is crowdfunding. Looking at peer-to-peer funding, and this is the exciting space with Patreon or Crowdcube, and these kinds of little spaces, or Pledge Me, and people are just suddenly, and when we started Karishma Design, really, we were called, a hippie company, and we could never get nobody took us seriously. But suddenly, young micro businesses, a few that I'm currently mentoring, have raised up to, 20 or 30,000 New Zealand dollars. Now, that's not a lot of money, but that's a fabulous amount of money to start. So I would say for micro businesses in the space of fashion and textiles, pledge me's and Patreons, and that getting a tiny philanthropic humans that want to do good. There's this dire need right now for people to want to contribute to something bigger than themselves. And probably find this to be true in South Africa, where, you know, I may not have $5,000, but I have 5. And so I can commit to the Care Bear project with $5 every month, you know, or 50 Rand every month. So there's a lot of that's happening right now in this space. The last thing in terms of organized angel investors, on the international arena, there are definitely few more than there ever were, because there are now organized platforms for that to happen. And I mean, I can share a few. I'd have to think of some that are specific to South Africa, but the one that comes to mind in New Zealand is the Callahan Innovation. But again, it's almost like, I want to see your plan, and then I'll try to look at what services you need, and then I'll put a project together. So yeah, so it's getting better, but it is still, because people are still interested in the old economic model. I will invest if I can make a return on investment in that very traditional sense. And that's the problem. So the non-linear peer-to-peer is for me a much better idea for young entrepreneurs in this space.
What about you, Christi? In your experience, have you applied for any sort of funding?
No, not yet. I'm still brand new, so I haven't done any of that yet. To be honest, I'm a little bit scared. I don't know what to expect from that. So I have registered as a nonprofit company, which should make applying for funding a little bit easier. But I haven't actually applied for anything yet. That's on my to-do list.
As applying for a nonprofit, has that actually taken for a really long time, actually? Apparently the process is really long.
No, not at all. I have to say my accountant helped me, and it was within a week it was done. So it was, yeah, it wasn't a long time at all.
Okay, that's cool. Well, I'm going to get back to you on whether you've applied for funding successfully at a later stage. You're going to have to give me feedback on that one. All right. So, you know, inherently trends feed the consumer machine, you know, the consumerist machine, this incessant need to buy. And as a fashion business, Karishma, you know, how does that affect how you create your products? Because, you know, there will always be consumers that are interested in being trendy, and then there's everybody else, you know. So how does this work into your model?
It doesn't. It doesn't. I'll be kind of very brave in saying this. We are not fashion followers. We fashion for the brave, the courageous, and the completely fearless, which is why it was really difficult. You know, the road was very difficult because we are a brand of that may create statement, beautiful, unique pieces. And our motto has been clothing is a self-expression of art. Your body is your canvas. So from my design perspective, we kind of help dictate trend and help direct that, not intentionally, you know, it's just we create within our own style. We create, because part of Karishma Design's philosophy and core philosophy was one of the key ways to democratize and control consumerism is through style, because that way everyone has a chance to play on the playing field. You know, you're better than me because I'm wearing a different style than you are. So with this mindset is how we create. We create for universality. So we create for multiple shapes, multiple sizes, and we don't use words like plus and you know, things like that. We just create. I consider the body as a beautiful form of perfection. And, you know, I kind of spiritually meditate an idea out and see how that's going to form. And I just get guided, because for me, that is what design, design is the expression of self. And I kind of bring it out onto paper and then discuss this with all the makers, and then we co-create. So in terms of trend and consumption, you are absolutely right that trend, does control the units you would sell. But we are fundamentally and have always been a slow fashion company. So our ethos is to transform waste into wearable, amazing art that is built, in our core principles. We build in longevity, we build in transformation of design, and we build in the factor that this piece is going to last in your wardrobe for many, many years. And you are going to be able to reinvent it. So when I create one range of clothing, the next range that follows on is completely compatible with that range that has been previously created. So we literally just building pieces. So we find that people that shop design and that have always shopped us are people that want to look unique. They're people that are just saying, I'm sick and tired of looking at the high street. I hate the high street. I don't want to be part of that. But I want to have beauty. I want to be different. I want to have that unique expression. So we're finding that there is this movement of individualism and of breaking the status quo and of just not wanting to feel the scarce, I lack some things I need to consume. We're finding that is becoming more and more and more. And, that has actually led us to our second big project, which is our Miraculous Me movement project, which is conscious styling. And that has stemmed from the fact that women over the last 20 years have said to me, I want to look different. And how is it that you just wear that? And what do you do? And so, so I think whilst people are following, people don't want to look the same today. We definitely are seeing that with our Gen Z and our so the Gen Zs and the baby boomers, and also with our Gen Xers, we're seeing more and more people who are just saying, I don't want that. And they're loving us because they love that we didn't design a plus size pair of pants, but we designed a pair of pants that makes the African booty look awesome. But we designed it that way. And then we also, the same pair of pants looks fabulous on the sort of string beaned body as well. That designing for the real women, understanding and embracing that every body is beautiful in its creation, and that there's no need for us to subscribe to the Eurocentric body type or any body type, really. Just believing and standing by that as a business, people just keep coming back. People currently are waiting for our next collection. We keep getting, when is the next collection going to happen?
That's really cool. Christi, I have a question for you on email. It was sent to me prior to this, and sorry, not prior to what Karishma was just saying. And the question is, how do you get inspiration for the teddy bears that you produce? They're so cute.
I just make them up as I go along. I just buy material and I think, what are they going to look like? And a lot of the times they come out different to the way I imagined them. They're cute either way, so it works.
That's really cool.
Thank you.
So, and then I have another question this is for both of you. I'm going to start with you, Christi. This was also a question by email about the challenges you face as a social enterprise. So Christi, I know that the Pear Bear project is still relatively new, but I'd like you to maybe speak to this question from two angles. One, with the Deep Spirit Foundation, because you've been working with them for a while, and your sort of brand new challenges that you're facing now as the Pear Bear project.
Okay, so there's some things that are, how can I say this? You don't always know what lies ahead when you work at Deep Spirit. So everything happens in its own time. So a lot of times when you have a production plan, sometimes you'll pitch up there and there might be a strike or something going on. Your production gets pushed on by another 2 weeks or so. There's a lot of things that we don't know. Electricity as well. A lot of times there's no electricity, which means we can't produce and we can't create things. And yeah, it's just a lot of challenges working within a township.
Yeah. So the challenges that are sort of within your control of changing, for example, you cannot control the electricity. But you know, can you maybe just speak to a challenge that you're able to manage right now, and how are you managing that challenge?
Well, when it comes to electricity, like I mentioned, I try to do skills training and make a bunch of different products. So with electricity being a problem, we often revert to hand sewing products and designing and drafting patterns and things like that, so that we can use the time that we have available to us. And another problem that I have with our Pay Bear project as well is we often run out of materials to use. So we do get donated some materials, but it's not the right material to make a teddy bear. We can't make a teddy bear out of PVC, which we use for handbags and bags. So that's one of the big problems we have, but we try to use what we can.
Interesting. What about you, Karishma? What challenges are you facing?
Okay, so I'm going to say ditto to Christi on all those challenges, but not so much the textile challenges, but definitely working in different communities. You know, one of the big things I think would be, because we work in different cultures to our own culture, and because that's part of our model, is to learn and to embrace that indigenous wisdom and to bring it into our Karishma Ubuntu philosophy. It's the challenge can be communicating in that community when you have a different ideology. And I'll give you an example. In our last project in Sri Lanka, we worked with a mixed gender community, and that's great. You know, that's lovely how we worked, but we didn't anticipate some of the issues, like you know, the women working with men have on the impacts in their family or in their communities. So an example, I'm working with you and I'm not thinking anything beyond, I'm just working with you. You know, we multi-religion, multicultural, and we all sort of working as a team. But that could have, and it did, bring animosity with, you know, with people in the community, like, oh, you working really late in the evening, or you taking work home, or, you know, your husband's been calling my wife in the middle of dinner or whatever. And, you know, so these are cultural barriers that come from societies that we may not be very sort of aware, or we have, you know, kind of, those are not our issues. And then there's, that's one kind of, you know, the sort of cultural, the sensitive cultural dynamics that you are getting involved with when you work in cultures and you work so closely with people and with artisans. And then the second, which I don't think is a necessarily a problem, but it's, you know, it can be challenging, and that is because we are so spread out, working with technology, and, you know, because we are so tiny, and because I'm me and I can't be everywhere, one of the challenges is just trying to get some of the people that I work with, because we are not ageist. So we have some really old, like our pattern maker was 90 years old and he was amazing in Sri Lanka.
Wow.
Getting, like a kind of real absolute guru of the of patterns. It was incredible. But to get him to, you know, get onto FaceTime with me and have a conversation is really, really hard. You know, so those are some of the challenges. How do we communicate? And I don't speak Sinhalese, so it's speaking and having to find the ways to connect in this global environment where you can't just use language. So how I overcome some of these things is, when language is absolutely a barrier, I do have somebody that can help me speak multiple languages. I always make an effort to try to learn some key things. I also draw, and I use universal languages, so like drawing and visualizations and things like that. So, you know, I've also had to adapt, because I realized that I had to be physically present to work with some of the people. Otherwise, it wasn't going to work the way I wanted it to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then the another challenge, which is really beyond me right now, is the challenge of textile waste.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we are a small, slow enterprise, and we don't produce hundreds and thousands of garments, yet the textile waste industry is almost becoming an industry in itself. You know, in the old days, we would just go to a few stores, and we used to go in Cape Town to Salt River and just go to a few stores and, you know, buy 50 meters of fabric and 5 meters of fabric. And now we go to markets that are wider than Long Street in Cape Town, or you know, West Street in Durban, twice its size and width, with stores kind of like little shacks, you know.
Yeah.
They are tiny, like little shacks, very Asian kind of style of commerce. So there's hundreds and thousands of stores, and these are secondhand or waste or remnant markets, you know, trash markets, books and buttons. And so this is a huge problem, and it's a problem that has caused us in Karishma Design to stop. And at the beginning of last year, to actually just stop and say, hang on, what actually is our impact as waste reducing designers? Are we really doing that? Are we, you know, just sort of propelling this industry on? So this is our biggest industry, the biggest problem right now is how do
what about, you know, appropriating your own waste? Because even though you're using textile waste to create your own products, inherently you will be creating an amount of waste yourself. What are you doing with your waste?
So we are, I take lots of pride in being a maverick pattern creator. So we try to use, so firstly in the design, so in the design process, we're not 100% zero waste, but we endeavor. So every time I sketch something or we design something, we put it on the table, and then we find the most zero waste process of how that's actually going to be developed. The second thing that we do, and we will do going forward for the new ranges, we haven't implemented it now, is we won't be making so many samples.
Yeah.
We don't do that in the moment. We only make one sample, but we make things with fabrics and we mold them on the dummies. But it's also the nature of our design, you know, it's very drape and irregular and asymmetric. So that's the second. The first key thing is on the pattern, on the design itself, before it even gets into production or gets into textiles. It's how do we reduce the waste in the way it's designed. So this is something that's very critical. In fact, part of the design philosophy is number one, if we can't, you know, if we have big chunks of waste in a piece, you know, when we're designing pattern pieces, we don't do it. We find another way to do it. We won't put it into if there's chunks of waste. The second thing that we do is we recreate our own textiles. So we have lots of pieces of clothing where we use already existing pieces of clothing, so jeans and skirts and whatever we find really. We rip and we, you know, remake fabric. So often we have squares and patches and circles and irregular pieces of fabric in the design, which is made from leftover pieces of fabric from our already leftover pieces of fabric. So these are the we do to eliminate the. And the third thing that we do is in the design, in the actual garment, once it's past the minimal waste in the design, and the next thing it has to pass is, can it be reinvented for approximately 10 different ways? So example, Karishma Design pants, one of our key silhouettes is called the asymmetric bubble pant. And if you look at the pant, you'll see one leg is different than the other leg. You'll find beneath and the inside, there's buttons and there's little like ties or bobbles or just, and then we almost give you, it's almost like you need a handbook, because the idea is meant to continuously reinvent. Also, a way that we can use tiny bits of waste within the design. So for closures, buttons, those things. So yeah, design. So that's what we're doing in the moment. And sadly, we don't think that that's good enough. We're still on a mission to do.
Well, the journey to zero waste, the journey to sustainability, it's a long, long one. And it's, you know, it's not a huge effort from one or two companies, but it's like tiny little steps by millions of little companies, you know, doing their bit for sustainability. Christi, within your space, you are, what are you stuffing the bears with? Are you having some kind of circularity within the materials that you're using?
No, I'm just using what we can find at the moment. For example, there's a big donation of stuffing at the Deep Search Foundation. So I don't know where it comes from, but we're using that at the moment, just a microfiber stuffing.
I see. So if you're doing stitching exercises on this side, you're using the remnants of stitching exercise on this side and stuffing the bears with whatever's left. Is that also what you're doing?
But we've also got normal microfiber stuffing that we're using at the moment. Because it's been donated to the foundation, we're able to use it. I did find that if we do use little offcuts of material for the stuffing, it does kind of misshape the bear a little bit. It's not always ideal, but if we do cut it really, really small, it works. It just makes it quite heavy and quite like sturdy and solid.
All right, so the bears are a little bit dumpy.
Yeah.
All right, so no, right? So okay. Now here comes the difficult question, and I'm going to start with you on this one, Christi. Bearing in mind that I am aware that Pear Bear is really, really new, but how do you intend to make this profitable? Because the biggest problem that most people have with social enterprise is that, you know, there's a saying that goes like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And if you're not making money, you know, is it worth being in business? And that's from a purely sort of like entrepreneurship driven perspective, that you're in business to make money. You want to make your life better and you want to make other people's lives better. So how are you intending to make the Pear Bear project profitable?
Okay, so that's 100%. You can't have a business without making a profit, otherwise it won't be sustainable. But what we're doing is we have the whole nonprofit side of it, where you can donate teddy bears or make teddy bears and have them donated. Or you can buy a bear from our site, and that goes straight to the community, and a percentage of those sales goes back into the business. And we've also got another part, the Pear Bears, which are the boutique style bears, and those bears actually fund the share bears. So if you buy a boutique style teddy bear, that money goes into the company, and that sustains the company.
Now, how long have you been running Pear Bear for?
It's about a month and a half. So it's still
okay, so it's very new. I'm not going to ask you any questions about what
very, very new.
But your uptick already. Okay, great stuff. So Karishma, now to you. How are you remaining profitable?
Okay, so we do have, I mean, when we sell a product, we have a markup on the product. So that's very traditional, you know, business. But we also have, you know, our product is the clothing and the accessories and the jewelry. And then we have our services side, which is the Miraculous Me, the conscious styling side, which initially used to just be a service of Karishma Design. And now that we have realized that we're sitting on this wealth of knowledge and people have asked us, like, you need to make this a package on its own because we want to continue, you know, having these services. We've kind of expanded the Miraculous Me product. And so that is another sort of product range that feeds into the business. But I mean, we are a social enterprise, which means that a large percentage of the amount of money we make goes back into the communities or into the ventures that we're choosing to put our money into. So I won't lie to you, it is a challenge, and it has been a challenge. The reason it's a challenge is because part of our sustainability model is to democratize sustainability is to make it accessible to people. And this is something that my Africanism sort of barks very strongly, no matter where I live. We can't be, fashion has dug itself in this hole because it's completely non-inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
And so in Karishma Design, the product has to be priced right, which means that our margins are not very large.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But we have a faithful clientele. So we don't have a huge clientele, but we have a faithful client.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that is something. So the road to, and I won't lie to you, the road to social entrepreneurship for a micro business is long, it's passion driven, and is sustained by passion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When you produce in this way, when we started, it was incredibly difficult. But now, today, in this current environment where we have 10 years to become carbon neutral, and don't know how we're going to do it, you find that there's this awareness where people are actually looking for your product. And if the product is priced right, with all the different types of payment opportunities that you have, you are able to actually be more sustainable. If you want to be more aggressive by selling more pieces, you can actually be more sustainable that way.
Mm-hmm.
The second, that we're sitting on a global market in the moment, which becomes tricky when you're measuring your carbon footprint. But in Karishma Design, we are working on a way to get rid of that. But with e-commerce, you suddenly have a platform where, you can sell to so many people. So Karishma Design has clients in the US, we have clients in Canada, we have clients in South Africa, New Zealand, and Australia, and the UK, and a few in Berlin and in other places in Europe. And these are just the same clients that keep coming back to us and that keep waiting. So the journey is not a quick fix unless you have a lot of backing and a lot of cash flow. But my work as an educator is in building sustainable micro businesses, because I think that's our. So coming from that perspective, the road is hard, the profit margins are slim, but if you continue to work at that level and continue to, relook and reinvent and redirect and just be consistent, we are seeing more businesses now grow, micro businesses grow and able to sustain themselves with tiny workforces than we did when we started in 2003. So are we doing it? We are doing it by making beautiful ranges, and we're doing tiny ranges, but we sell all of them. We literally sell all of them. Like right now, if we could actually physically sew clothes, we would have at least about 150 to 200 orders in the lockdown. And that's not a lot of orders. Absolutely not. For a huge business, that's not a lot of orders, but we are not a huge business.
Exactly.
We are purpose-driven, and we are here on a bigger mission. And the way to make more money is to get all of us only buying sustainable clothing. And the only way to do that is if we make it more affordable to people.
Thank you for that. Right. Thank you for that. So Christi, there's another question on email for you. Do you ship overseas? Do you ship internationally? It's a two-part question. Hang on. Let me finish the second part. So it's, do you ship internationally, firstly? And secondly is, would you consider doing bears that are customized? And the person's asking in terms of, like, she's seen an idea on, I'm paraphrasing the email, it's a really long one, on making bears out of shirts, for example, of a deceased granddad. And she wanted to know, can you customize bears like that?
That's a beautiful idea. I can definitely do that. Even if it is making a teddy bear with a shirt made from the shirt, which would be something that works. And then I'm not shipping overseas currently, but if it is someone who specifically wants something, I can always make a plan. But at the moment, I'm not shipping right now. I'm still new. I'm still a baby.
So I'm still sticking with you now, Christi. And what are your plans for growing within the next, let's be generous with time. So within the next 2 years, how would you like to grow this business?
I'd like to feed back into communities more. I'd like to get involved with a lot of nonprofits. There are tons of nonprofits that have sewing schools and ECDs within that same, like the Deep Search Foundation is a big foundation. They've got an ECD and their adult education. So I'm looking at communities like Ipswich and Tembisa where they have sewing schools, but also other schools and ECDs within that community. So I'd like to, on a regular basis, be able to give back. I'm working now on getting people to actually donate teddy bears to me, and like your son, making teddy bears, so we can start the process of giving back to the community first. So right now I'm in the relationship building phase. I just want to be able to give back as many as I can, but at the same time create employment for seamstresses.
Incredible. And what about you, Karishma? What's your 2-year plan?
Okay, well, the 2-year plan is to release a book that I'm working on.
Nice.
So Karishma Design in 2018 took a pledge that we are not going to produce clothing. It's part of our reducing the carbon footprint and trying to just reduce the amount of clothes that are on the earth right now. We took a pledge that we would not produce a new range of clothing until we had a more viable, localized solution of how we would produce and how we would disseminate the clothing internationally. And so we're working on that right now. It's a project, and we're looking at how we're going to develop this circular solution. And so this is part of our think tank that's happening right now. I'm also working on a project which I'm most excited about, and that is called the Miraculous Me Movement. And this is about...
I am so sorry, Karishma, I'm going to stop you for a second. Like, my internet completely bombed out and everything disappeared for a second. I'm sorry, can you please just start again from your 2-year plan? You said you're writing a book.
Okay, so, well, the two-year plan is very simple. So firstly, in terms of Karishma Design, the brand, we are on a production fast until 2021. We have a new range where our fabric is currently being woven and put together in India. We also will be using only bespoke, so only fabric that already exists. So this dress, for instance, was made from a sari, and so it's now recreated into a dress. So we will make things that are only from existing cloths in this time period. So the 2-year plan is that we're working on 2 very exciting projects. The first being the Miraculous Me Movement, where we realized in our 20 years that no matter what solution we brought in terms of the types of sustainable clothing we brought into the market, if we didn't help shift the mindset of how we consume, we were going to be, kind of on this hamster wheel, not because we can't satisfy this insatiable appetite to buy, to need, to want. So the project that I'm working on is a project called Miraculous Me, and you say it in the first person. It's a conscious styling movement where we teach you with the toolkit that we are developing right now how to develop your own style, how to use getting dressed every day as a creative expression, as a form of self-therapy and connection, as a spiritual moment to connect to yourself, to help you create a paradigm shift from feeling not enough and having a low self-esteem, which we have realized is why people shop crazily, to one of feeling empowered and feeling worthy and feeling enough. So this is the movement that I'm working on. So the goal for the next 2 years is to have written this book, to have it out on the market, and to have actual research around, and to give it as our gift to the consumers and to the world right now as a product that really helps shift that, because I'm in this game to really not be in a job anymore. I really would like to just create for creation's sake and not have to worry about whether we're gonna have dolphins for my grandkids one day. So this is my 2-year goal. the other project that we're working on is a new system of how we can produce locally, even though we can be designers from an international platform. So basically decentralizing the fashion supply chain. So these are the two projects. The first one is meant to be out next year, Miraculous Me Movement, and the second one for 2022. So these are two big projects. Yeah,
those are incredibly huge. Yeah, those are really big projects. But I think it's exciting times in the space of social entrepreneurship, and I think that, you know, there's one thing that has come out of this whole COVID crisis, and that is we might be socially distancing from each other, but we also seem to be more connected than we've ever been. People are a whole lot more generous with their time, and they're more generous with what they know and their skill sets. And I think that that's a testament to the human nature, you know, like we were in a phase where we were just selfish, you know, just being completely and almost irreparably focused, you know, and now it's changing, and I think that's a great change to see. So Christi, I'm going to start with you here in terms of what would you like people listening to this webinar to take away from it?
I'd like to emphasize the need from the community to give back to the community. So if people could just want to, you know, give back more by helping. It's just a way for us to give back to communities with sewing, seamstresses, and by giving something simple like a toy, it makes a big difference in someone's life.
And what is your one piece of advice that you would give to anyone wanting to start a social enterprise?
Just keep going, just carry on. It is difficult. It's not an easy task. It's very easy to want to give up. I feel that way every now and then, but just keep going and keep the main goal in mind.
And do you, Karishma, what would you like people to take away from this talk?
Well, to all the budding social entrepreneurs and people who would like to start businesses, I definitely think that it is the way of the future. To be self-empowered and to, you know, walk your path is the way forward. But the way to walk that path, remember, is unique to you. Don't compare yourself to anyone else. You know, people may look like they're ahead of you. Just because you started later doesn't mean you're going to finish the race later. It doesn't matter. Each of us are here for a completely beautiful, unique purpose. And your purpose and my purpose may not be exactly the same, even though it may look identical. It's not. So just walk and stay true to yourself and take that leap of faith and just go ahead and do it. The future of business is in not, you know, this irregular profit linear business. The future of business is purpose-driven social entrepreneurship. So just go for it and just be who you are. Do you. Just do that.
I have to say, I agree with you. I think we're seeing more and more the need, but also the answer to the need for driving businesses toward a circular approach. You know, like there are so many new interesting business models popping up around circular economy, and even without most social enterprises knowing about it, they're a huge part of how circular economy works anyway. So both Christi and Karishma, I'd like to thank you very much. You have given me so much of your time. That was incredibly generous of you. I wish you both the best for your 2-year plans. Those are some lofty goals over there. But thank you very much for sharing with my viewers what your business journey has been, and being very frank about the challenges that you're facing. So you know, I think it's people like you that allow people who are interested in a particular space to enter with a little bit less trepidation. So thank you very much for that. And for all the viewers, thank you very much for attending. I really appreciate your support over the last, I think it's been 5 or 6 weeks. I can't really remember now. It's been a while. But thank you for following me on this journey for season 1. I will be back. I'm just not entirely sure when. But, you know, for all your support, you are most welcome to contact us at Creatively Connected for a consultation, a 1-hour consultation, on which we'll be offering you a 45% discount. I will pop the email address that you would need to contact on the chat. Let me just do that now. And please use the subject line ROG. Oh, I sent it to the wrong one. I sent it to the panelists. Sorry, that's me being really silly. Yeah, I'll pop it in now. But anyway, so please use the email code. The subject line would be ROG001 to claim your 45% discount. If you have any questions further that you would like to ask my guests, I will be posting their social handles in the usual place where I post all my all the webinars that we've run thus far. So if you've missed out anything, that's where you're going to get it. And last thing, Karishma, I have this one for you. And I think this is just an aside because I'm deadly curious about this. You've worked in a lot of countries. Last question, and you can just like one word it. Which of those countries have been the most challenging to work with?
I would say Sri Lanka.
Is it, and it would be just the language barrier?
I mean, I don't speak Thai or anything like that. We hit a patriarchal environment and we hit misogyny and gender in a way that we didn't face in Africa or Thailand or China or Indonesia. All of those being slightly patriarchal environments. Yeah, we didn't hit that. And
Great
then so Sri Lanka would be, but not, you know, it was just the experience.
Thank you for that. And I think that this is a really great note to end off the season for these webinars. So all of the budding social entrepreneurs, take your cue from these two incredible ladies doing amazing things in a space that is challenging in more ways than you can think of. And yeah, that's the end of it. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye-bye.